Start recording. All right. Follow the raw slide. So hopefully it's recording at a good time and not back to then. So my name is Joel Span, and I'll be doing on the Quebec bridge collapse. Okay, so we'll be going to a little context. This is context, just going over the narrative pretty much. So background, incident, the cause of incidents, the aftermath. Then go to the ethics, kind of the values, morals, and responsibility of like the whole thing. All right, so the background. So the incident took place in Quebec, Canada. The bridge was built over the St. Lawrence River, and the bridge was proposed in the late 19th century. So I think around like 1890-ish, like late 1890s, mid 1890s, it kind of was presented to be built. The bridge was a government project, so the Canada government kind of was the ones funding it and wanted the project to be built of the bridge. So they held a design competition. Really couldn't find nothing on if it was global. I'm assuming it was global, kind of out there, but because of where like the main people came from. But so they had like a global design competition of design companies and bridge companies and just engineers submitting their own bridge designs into them, and they was just trying. They just kind of chose like the best ones they found. So Theodore Cooper, who was an engineer in from New York, was a really good engineer at the time. He was, I guess, selected by the government as like the consultant and head engineer over the whole project. And with him and I guess the Canadian government kind of looking at designs from companies over the bridge, over the competition, the Phoenix Bridge Company was actually selected for their design. Cooper was like the main push for it because he just felt like their design was pretty easy design, simple, cost efficient, where it wasn't cost much. And also Phoenix Bridge Company was one of the top engineering or not engineering, but like bridge building companies at the time in the 19th century. So they were kind of the ones selected. So the foundation for the bridge were kind of installed in between 1899 to 1903, where they kind of was installing them. Anchor spans were approved in 1904, and they kind of started laying those foundation down and started beginning construction in 1905. The initial design for the bridge was actually to be 1,600 feet foot span across, and then it got extended to 1,800 foot by Cooper. And Cooper also changed some other stuff in the design where like the normal wind load for a bridge is usually like 56 pounds per square feet, but he actually lowered it to 30 pounds per square feet. He also increased the work stress load to 21,000 pounds per square inch for E30, which I guess are kind of like his own kind of or not his own, but like the supports were like E30. He put the load up to 21,000 and then 24,000 pounds per square inch for E50 support loads. Usual standard is like 16,000 per square feet or square inch. So he kind of increased it by a lot. With him increasing the size of the bridge to 18,000 feet, it actually made it the largest. It would made it the largest bridge in the world, surpassing the Forth Bridge, which is in Scotland, which was I think a little bit over. It's like 17 or 1,710 foot span. Him increasing the bridge to 18,000 feet was actually to make it faster by just actually expanding the center truss of the bridge a little longer, making just I guess less structural supports needed and just taking less time to build. And then the incident that took place happened on August 29th of 1907 when the bridge collapsed. So this is the Phoenix Bridge design. This was like the initial design because kind of in the middle bottom, you can see it says 16,000 square feet or 1,600 feet across. And then you can just, see little simple designs. So the incident took place. So a worker named Bavius was driving rivets into the great southern span of the bridge. near the end of the day, he had noticed that rivers that he'd driven in less than like an hour away, uh, kind of has snapped in, or not kind of, but have snapped in half into two pieces, and he was calling his foreman when the bridge, or not in the bridge, but like, and then when the bridge collapsed from under him, and he can hear like the metal snapping in piece or twisting in pieces in the air. Uh, so the cantilever dropped from underneath him, or underneath them, because it was multiple workers at the time, crashing into the river with such force that people in the city of Quebec actually thought that an earthquake had happened. And Quebec is actually like 10 kilometers away, roughly. So they kind of, there's a loud fall. Also, at the time, there was a timekeeper named Hoyt, I think you pronounced that, who had been just about to whistle at the end of the day for work when he ran in panic as he felt the deck collapsing below him. And then he barely reached safely in time as the deck finally collapsed. Bavius, who went down with the bridge, managed to actually wiggle out with only a broken leg, as he was one of the few survivors. A train engineer actually plunged with his locomotive into the river, but was dragged out by a rescue team. Which I don't know if the train was just stationed there at the time, because just bringing in parts probably, I would assume, because the bridge wasn't finished, fully completed. But and then so on that day there was 86 workers on the bridge at the time. 75 of them passed away with the collapse of it. Many of those workers were actually from the Cagnawaga area, which is famous for their high steel work. And most of the people that died because they got crushed by the steel, drowned in the water before the rescue boat could get to them, and then also others just fell into the water just from the impact of falling and just hitting the ground. So it's kind of far fall. So this was the aftermath of the incident, kind of, which is what the bridge looked like after the collapse. Kind of grainy picture, but you know, it's 1900, so not really good camera quality. So the cause of the collapse. So the cause of the collapse was caused by the cantilever arms just snapping in half because of too much just pressure and weight. With the extension of the bridge, it increased the weight of the bridge. The engineers did not take that into calculations at the time. I guess from the just because the initial designs were 1,600 feet, and them increasing it to 1,800 feet. I guess they didn't think about increasing the supports because the change of the bridge was just in the middle of the bridge at the truss itself, but not really like kind of on the outsides or outskirts of the bridge where like more of the supports are at. So I guess they didn't, because they wasn't really changing much in that aspect. It was just more change in the middle. They didn't think to increase the strength of the support stack to hold the arms. So the engineers on the site finding out that the bridge did weight was a little over too much weight. They kind of were so far in their progress that they didn't think, or that Cooper himself actually didn't want to take the bridge apart and put new arms on by increasing support the extra weight. So Cooper calculated the increase in weight and found that it was only a 7% increase, which he determined would be non-fatal, and decided that they didn't need to take the bridge apart at the time. So most of the destruction happened in the cantilevers and the south span being was bending and stuff. Approximately like 3 weeks prior to the incident, there was an engineer named Norman McClure who had reported to Cooper that he had found in bends in the cantilever's arm supports, which was I think around August 6th. I think it was the first report made. He then made a second report on August the 12th of more bending. I think he found 2 more supports bending. I think more of the supports was in that A7L, AAL, and A9L was more the bending. He then ended up making a final report on August 27th that there were even like that in those 3 supports that there was even more bending and more just stress on them, that he felt that it was kind of too dangerous or stuff to work on the site. So Norman McClure actually took a train from Quebec, Canada to New York to meet with Cooper in person because Cooper was not on site, and so um, they ended up meeting in person to discuss kind of the bridge itself and kind of have more understanding of what was happening. Uh, let's see. Oh, so then as they discussed kind of what was happening, Cooper kind of finally realized like how bad the bending of the supports were that he uh told McClure to send a not a letter but to send a wire to the Phoenix Bridge Company to stop all operations, and he also told McClure to go to the Phoenix Bridge operation or site to tell them to stop all operations. Which Phoenix Bridge was located in Pennsylvania. I guess one of the companies was located at Pennsylvania. So, and he didn't send the reports until August 29th, the date of the incident. But by the time the messages got there and McClure had reached Phoenix Bridge um, company in Pennsylvania, the collapse had already happened and it was too late. Okay. So this is just a diagram just showing kind of what was happening. So the bottom one shows the like kind of like where the main bendings were at, where AAL, A9L were like the main major bending. The bridge actually didn't collapse though until like more like in the center middle part and not kind of where like the main supports are at. But I guess because of the if you see the middle, you see it says the simple truss, and then on the top diagram and it shows load kind of pointing in the middle. That's where like all the weight was at because it just had less supports as you get closer to the middle, and that's where just more the collapse fell from. And it just kind of shows the compressions and the tension at the members and the supports. So the aftermath. So after the incident, the Canadian government took over the project to rebuild it. They rebuilt the bridge with the same design, but they just added much heavier cantilever arms, just the extra support because for the weight, since it's such a large bridge. The bridge did have a second incident, and was the center span collapsed on September 11th, 1916, which is kind of like funny because that's like the same place I think it collapsed in Cooper's initial kind of project. But I think it was more just like if you go back kind of, it was more just like the simple truss area, the cantilever, more than like kind of like most of the centerpiece. Because like Cooper's was like most of the centerpiece, where theirs was just like a small portion of the centerpiece collapsed. With their collapse by the government, um, uh, there was 13 men who had got killed falling into the river. The bridge would then eventually be completed in 1917, which they finally reconstructed it. And then the Prince of Wales would officially open on August 29th, 1919. I guess he gave it like a 2-year span, kind of just more to make sure it's safe and secure for like the public and trains to like, go on. Because I'm pretty sure it's also made for trains to drive by and stuff. Let me see. Cooper also received most of the criticism and blame for the fail of the initial bridge when like his design did have fail and collapse. And most of the blame was just because of his like negligence of multiple reports of the bridge being defected. Just kind of just showing this on the left hand side is just showing the second bridge collapse, kind of more how it was in the center, just clean snap. And then on the right side, the more like I guess brownish yellow picture, it's kind of showing the final complete build of the bridge. Okay. So this is just the number and ethics, kind of the values of everything. I don't think Cooper just demonstrated good values on this project as a project leader or lead engineer. Cooper changed major things in the initial for the final design of it, but just by decreasing the wind load by 26 pounds, I don't think is a good thing. Also, increasing the weight of the bridge and at the like supports was not good, just because he went from usually that standard of 16,000 pounds per square inch up to 21,000 pounds per square inch for E30 and 24,000 pounds per square inch for E50. I just think wasn't a smart idea with him increasing the size of the bridge. So it's already now going to be heavier. And now you're increasing the weight on it too. So I just think that wasn't a smart thing to do. Before all, even like when his initial or when the final design was kind of sent out and I guess discussed with the or sent out to the government for them, I guess approve it. I mean, I'm not going to think, but I know that Cooper was the lead engineer, so they kind of just gave him all the control kind of on like everything. So, but and because all like changes in designs and stuff that happened went through him more of not the government. But I would assume the government still would have known about those changes and stuff, which what was it? Which so they did have a engineer that worked for the government who criticized his design just because of the changes he was making, and that kind of enraged and angered Cooper to go through with it even more. I guess to prove him wrong, which they think his ego kind of got in the way of him, and the failure of design was more of his ego because he didn't take the criticism. Because I think you should take, I mean, you should take criticism with a grain of salt, they say, but I just think he should have kind of listened more and just like actually reevaluate it. Like he didn't have to make those changes, but he should have reevaluated and stuff. I think Cooper also didn't take the precautions that he should have, because just with increasing the size, I think he did have a team of engineers, but he also should have made sure they did everything they were supposed to do, like changing, like nobody calculated for the increase in weight when they changed the size of the bridge. Now, because you're adding another 200 feet onto the bridge, so it's going to be even heavier now because you're adding more cement and more steel being added to you're adding more steel because it wasn't cement, but you're adding more steel to you're adding 200 feet more steel to the bridge, so it's going to be heavier. And nobody made the calculations to how much they needed to make the support stronger and increase the size of the supports. None of that. Nobody took that into calculation, which is on Cooper and his team per se, because somebody should have like realized and be like, oh, this is bigger. Let me change that. Let me make sure this is good. Let me see. Also, I think it was bad that he wasn't on site for a lot of it, because it said that he said he was sick or something and had to take sick leave. So he was in New York for the whole construction, but I'm pretty sure he never went to Quebec, Canada to actually go on site and check out like what happened. Couldn't find no reports on that. So pretty much they had to communicate back and forth through just calls, just wires, all that stuff, and just their form of communication back then, and just to communicate, which I know it took probably a little longer than how we communicate now, or we can communicate so much faster. So I just think that made it worse, because Eli, even like the time when he realized, like, oh, yeah, this is really bad. Let's stop all operations. They said the message was sent out at, I think, 12 p.m. He sent the message. They didn't receive it. Or Phoenix Bridge didn't receive it, which was that was sent from New York to Pennsylvania. Phoenix Bridge didn't receive it until like an hour later, or hour and a half later. It was like 1:30, or it was like 1:30 something, or like between 1 and 1:30. He sent it out at 12. So it took a whole hour just for them to send a message from New York to Pennsylvania. And then and by the time and then he sent McClure, who had to go by train or car. I didn't know. It didn't say. It took him almost, he didn't get there until about 5. So it took him another 5 hours just to reach there for in person. And then they're like, oh, no, or they done already like, oh, it done already collapsed. All these people died already. Like, so that's just the thing where he should have just took more precautions with all that. Because if he was on site, he could have seen what was happening, and he could have also like stopped it if he was there, or if he would just have went and did like a, oh, I'm gonna go every 2 weeks and just check on it and be there for a couple of days and check and see what's happening, then he could have saw like the changes that was happening in person and then made the like decisions like, all right, we should stop all operations now. And I just think he lacked professionalism and neglected his duties. And also with the design, he just kind of put money and time over safety by changing it and making so many changes and then not calculating it. Um, so kind of the morals, he just neglect his moral values as an engineer or by the engineering world, kind of like what they set as like a standard, you know what I mean? Was just making changes to the bridge and not properly calculating them, or making sure his team is calculating them, making the judgments they needed. And then also knowing that the weight of the bridge was more than what they calculated, and seeing that it was a 7% increase, he should have like known that, oh, this 7%. I mean, as an engineer, you know, like even though it's like you're seeing, oh, only 7%, that's still a big difference in weight. That's still a big difference and will affect something. Even though it could have been good, while they could have built the whole bridge, made it, nothing happened. Eventually, something would have happened, because that's just over time is going to wear out and it would happen. Also think it was bad that he chose kind of for the design competition, cheap, easy and quick design to build, where I feel like you shouldn't do that. You should always go with a design that is kind of like happy medium, whereas like it's a good, sturdy, strong design, and it might be a little expensive, but it's not over expensive. You know what I mean? Or it's not under expensive, because under expensive things, cheap metal, cheap stuff, and it's maybe thin, flimsy, it breaks and fall. But if you get like a good, solid design, all right, thick, strong, you know, it kind of does the job and all that stuff. Him actually being sent multiple reports saying something was wrong, being told something was wrong, and still waiting last second to be like, oh yeah, now let's try. Oh yeah, let's stop. But it's too late now, because you waited last second, which he should have done something at least that second week, when he got another report that there were 2 more bins found. So now there's 3 bins found in all the supports. I think that should be enough to be like, all right, let's stop all operations and see what happened. I think the engineers on site also could be held responsible, just because even though Cooper wasn't there were engineers on site. Them seeing it, they could have kind of made a decision to be like, hey, we're going to stop all operations and we're going to go talk to Cooper in person and show him kind of what's happening, to explain like the severity of like the damages to the bridge, to be like, hey, we stopped all operations. We told them we're not allowing them to work no more. We need to fix this. We need to do something. Which I think they could be held responsible for too. All right, so kind of just like where the responsibility goes, and most of it is, you know, held for Theodore Cooper, because he was the lead engineer. I think a lot of it kind of falls on him. Just being over the project, not really taking the precautions that he needed to take, and just being responsible in the sense. I think engineers on site can be held responsible, just because they are on site, they see what's happening, they kind of know, all right, this is getting bad, and they should have took action and took over and stopped it themselves. I think seeing that Cooper wasn't making the changes that should have been needed. I think also the Phoenix Bridge Company could be held a little responsible, because I mean, it was their design, and I know Cooper was like the head guy, so he was making changes. But I think like as the construction team was out there, they could have maybe told him like, hey, I don't think we should make these changes, or kind of suggest other alternatives to it, to where he's not just taking over like the whole design themselves, even though, because you are the ones who made the design, so you should have some what say in it, and like be like, hey, I don't think we should change this, or we shouldn't change that, because like, whereas like, because you should know like, okay, y'all are the top bridge building company in the world, so you're like, hey, I have some power, I have some credibility to be like, I don't think this is going to work properly with all this, so I think we should not do it like this and stop this and all that stuff. I think the government kind of could be held a little responsible too, just because it was a government funded project and they were the ones kind of who wanted it. So they could have had more people. I don't know. I mean, I couldn't find nothing with like saying there was like, government people on there, but they could have more government officials or something on site, making sure everything was working smoothly and properly. Even when they had a government engineer kind of criticize his design, they could have kind of put more um just people there to just make sure, because it was a crazy design at the time, I guess, with just making it so big and so long and then just changing so much stuff. Um, that when they did have a few people like in the government saying, hey, I don't think this is gonna work. This should change some things. I don't think this is a good idea. Even though Cooper was kind of sticking when they're like, all right, you're the lead guy, Cooper, you can make the decisions. They should have still had somebody there to like kind of just, make sure everything was going good and smoothly. And then, I mean, that's it for me. This is my works cited. Thank you.